It's an important election that's coming up in just about a month. What do voters need to know about why they should vote for you?
Because when we look at this election, this is probably the most important election in this city since consolidation. And when we look back over the last 7 years, all the murders, all the violent crime, the issues of distrust in the neighborhoods, I think Jacksonville needs someone that has the experience and the qualifications to come in and ready to go to work at day one. We look at the sheriff's office with all these issues coming from the budget, from the community, from crime. The learning curve is going to be very steep, and we need a person who can come in with fresh ideas. You know, I look at my time at the sheriff's office. I was there for 30 years. I commanded half the uniform patrol officers at the sheriff's office. I led major initiatives. My time at the airport as their chief of police. Then I look at my time at the school police department, retiring as their police chief. You know, we need someone who can come in with some new innovative ideas, who are able to think out of the box, because what we've been doing in Jacksonville for the last 7 years hasn't been working, and we need to come in with a fresh look at things to make sure that we can make a difference for crime and other issues of trust in our city.
Looking at what we have right now, what we're experiencing with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, if you were to be elected as the next sheriff, what's the first issue, the biggest issue that you would change?
I think one of the biggest things we need to do is change the culture and climate of our officers to return back to community policing and understand that our job is to serve and to protect. You know, things have happened nationally over the last several years that's caused a chasm to come between law enforcement and the community. How do we return back to that community? Because we are a part of the community. We're not here to oppress the community. How can we find a way to work together to build what I call my 5 pillars of trust, accountability, accessibility, compassion, and transparency as we go about providing professional law enforcement service to the citizens all over Jacksonville?
Jacksonville Sheriff's Office is not without its issues for years. As someone who's worked for that agency, what has your role been in some of those issues, and how are you planning on being a part of that solution if you're elected sheriff?
Some of the issues that I've heard is the hiring of personnel. You got to make sure that the sheriff's office reflect the neighborhood that we're in charge of policing. When I came on as a patrol officer in 1983, my academy class put the sheriff's office over 100 minority officers. I'm talking about black minority officers. And when we look now here in 2022, we have a little over 200 total African Americans on the sheriff's office. We need to make sure that we aggressively look into the diverse communities that are coming to Jacksonville to try to hire people that we look like the community. One of the things that I want to do, if I'm fortunate to be sheriff, the term is over in 3031. So I call it my 30 by 30 plan. So what I want to do is to aggressively go out to hire minorities throughout the community. So by 3030, the sworn ranks of the sheriff's office is at least 30% minority representation, which is, the city is almost at 47% minority representation. So that's below the city, but I think 30 by 30, it sounds great. That'll be a good start, a good target to go for by 3030 in Jacksonville.
Last year there was a little bit of a dip, but consistently over the last 5 to 7 years, and especially this year, every weekend it's a new shooting, multiple shootings, sometimes several murders. What would you do to change that?
We need to go back to proactivity. It seems as the sheriff's office is in a reactionary mode where something happens, they go react, then they try to solve. I think we need to go back and try some of the concepts that we did in 2007 when I led a program called Operation Safe Streets. We were proactive. We used data. We used real-time street intelligence. We knew who the people were. We knew where to deploy our people to go out and try to prevent some of these murders in some of these tough areas. You know, there are some murders, you know, i.e. domestic violence. They're very difficult to solve. But we were out engaged in the community through a program. We call it Park and Walk, where officers parked their cars, they got out, they talked to people and went into businesses, because that's how you get that real-time street intelligence. That's how you build trust in the community. And another thing we did, because a lot of people say they don't see the police, but when you see the police, you feel safe. When bad people see the police, they go away. We copied a program back then. We called it high visibility patrols, where officers patrol certain neighborhoods with their cruiser lights. And all that is one solid red and one solid blue light. We had to find a way to make the invisible visible. because bad guys don't want to get caught. So I think if we come with some of those programs and then work collaboratively, because when we look at the shootings last weekend and then we look at the shootings of the last year, they used to say it was a north side problem. They used to say it was a west side problem. But when we look at that map of all those homicides, this is a Jacksonville problem. And this is going to require a Jacksonville solution. So what we need is a sheriff that's bold enough to think out of the box, to be that bold sheriff for this new bold city.
And for the murders that have already happened, there's some discrepancy depending on who you ask about the clearance rate. First off, what is your thought on that? And secondly, how do you make that clearance rate higher so that if a murder happens, the person who does it knows they're going to get caught?
So when we look at the clearance rate, over the last several years nationally, that clearance rate has been declining. Nationally, it's around 52, 54%, depending upon which source you go to. But here in Jacksonville, consistently, based on other data, they've been under that 50% threshold. One station mentioned that it was at 29%. But when we look at the sheriff's office forward-looking dash, the last year they're claiming a 78% clearance rate, which is, I find that hard to believe, that high. And when we look at clearance rates nationally, there's a difference if you look at it by ethnicity. In the white community, there's a higher clearance rate than there are in the minority communities. And there's some social, economic, and issues that we're dealing with. But I think that one of the things that we can do as a community is to move toward technology to help us in those areas, because people are not coming forward with information. But if we put cameras in certain locations, because we hear it all the time, something will happen, bad guy left in a vehicle of this description, and we're going around canvassing people for cameras. What if we were to put strategically cameras around in certain neighborhoods? We can capture that vehicle, we can get that tag, we can go and find that person based on that information to find a way to solve some of these homicides that are happening through proactivity versus then standing and being in a reactionary mode.
And lastly, I mean, we've kind of hit these 5 questions, but as someone who lives in Jacksonville and relies on JSO, is the answer an establishment candidate? Is it somebody who's outside of the box? Is it more of the same? I mean, what is the answer for changes to be made where people feel like they're safe regardless of the neighborhood they live in?
So, that is a very good question. And we ask people, if you're satisfied with what's going on in this city, if you're satisfied with the level of police service you have been receiving, if you're satisfied with things, vote for that establishment candidate. But if you're not, we need to pick someone else. I think the biggest thing, we need to look at experience. We look at qualifications. Here I've had every position at the sheriff's office up to a division chief. I'm a graduate of the FBI National Academy. I've been the police chief at the airport, the police chief at the school police department. I've been a member of all the major law enforcement professional organizations. I've trained professionally in the United States and Canada. We need to make sure that whoever we choose has that bold vision, that bold leader who can come in on day one and do this job, who can think out of the box. All the other candidates, they all work for me, and they all they know is the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. That one silo, they have a limited view. We need somebody who can come in with a wide lens, who's willing to try something different, because there's not a one-size-fits-all. You can't look at the old way. We got to look at a new way of doing things, because we got to have a change in Jacksonville if we're going to solve these murders and violent crime and build trust in these communities.